Senator Deacon, welcome to the conference.
Thank you very much, Brian, and what a treat to have a science communicator of your caliber hosting this conference. It says a lot of where KBHN's come to and what it values.
You want to make remarks first, and then you and I will have a brief discussion. Go ahead.
That's great. Brian, I can't help but look back to my first conference at KBHN in Calgary. And I think of where the organization was at that time. And to look at the fact that this really impressive round of funding for Cycle 3 was achieved, I look at the people that have put their hearts and souls into making this happen. And they're just, the leadership from Nikki and James and David Kuick on the board, right through. I saw so many great faces of friends that it was great to see Donna Thompson and Julie Hennigsberg in the pre-show. Just the dedication right through to the researchers and every team in every research lab. It's what got us to this point of KBHN having this new round of funding, and it's just phenomenal. But it happened because conditions for success were put in place. And there's one person I just have to recognize, and that's our past chair, Sheila Laredo, for really ensuring that the conditions for success were in place to achieve Cycle 3 funding, to make sure that we knew that we had to focus on impact, and impact was the key word. How are we changing the lives of parents and clinicians who are trying to help kids with neurodevelopmental disabilities to achieve to their potential? And I look back to that first conference in Calgary, and we had these phenomenal meetings of researchers doing the most incredible work. But I left one of those meetings of researchers to go and listen to a room of parents at the front of the hotel. And unfortunately, it wasn't full of researchers. The researchers and the parents were separate at that point in time. And the stories that I was hearing from these predominantly moms, powerful executives and engineers, feeling completely alone and helpless and unqualified to support their children with complex needs. And that for me was it was a pivotal moment. And I said, how do we make sure that we're actually improving their lives? How do we make sure that we're actually making a difference today, not just a generation from now? So for me, that was a key moment. And I was so proud. I think it was a year later in Toronto when every panel had a researcher, a clinician, and a parent on as part of at least the Q&A session following a research presentation. That was phenomenal, because what it meant was our researchers were getting the benefit of hearing about the lives of parents and feeling what they were feeling. And getting informed and helping those experiences use those experiences to inform the research. And I thought that was just a tremendous forward motion. And I've been lucky enough to be someone involved in Canada's phenomenal research community, medical research community, since the early 90s, and working with Henry Friesen at the Medical Research Council of Canada, now CIHR. And I look at how far we have come, and I look still at how far we need to go. Canada has got an absolutely incredible research engine, but we're still building the transmission that takes those ideas out of the minds of researchers and out from behind the paywall of a scientific journal, and putting it into a context that it can be grabbed by a partner and mobilized in a way to change lives. That is a job we've got to do in every area of science. And I believe that the KBHN is putting in place the conditions for success to be a leader in showing every area of science in Canada how we can do a much better job of mobilizing our research to improve lives. And is it ever needed now more than ever in the COVID era? You think about the COVID era, and there's estimates that we've digitized at a pace of 6 years over the last 6 months. The trajectory that we're on in digitization prior to COVID, if you look at how far we moved, it would have taken 6 years pre-COVID. So the world has been transformed, and people have been left even more on their own. And my Lord, I can't imagine how that's impacted the families of kids with neurodevelopmental disabilities. So the leadership that you can show in trying to bring together the skills of how to digitally deliver value to those families. It's so exciting to think about what can be accomplished, and the fact that Canada can become a leader in delivering services globally, potentially, because if we get this under control. But science doesn't deliver impact without a whole lot of work. And again, that's the transmission that we need to build in this country, that transmission of ideas and turning it into opportunities and value for Canadians and for the world. I look at it and say that it doesn't just require pushing research out of labs. It requires creating the pull, harnessing the interests of partners who really can use and appreciate the value that you're delivering. And that as a result of that partnership, and as a result of bringing their skills to the table, you can actually start to deliver delight to the lives of families that don't have it right now. And we've got some great partners that have experience in this space. We have partners who've been delivering services. I think in my own province, Strongest Families Institute has got some tremendous experience in delivering services remotely and has been doing it for many, many years. I think a lot of it emanating out of James Reynolds' lab. So KBHN has already got some great experience there, and I think can become absolutely a world leader. So that's my dream, is show us all how to build that transmission that's going to make sure that the lives of families are immensely impacted. But I can't help but reflect with great pride and gratitude for all that has been achieved by the KBHN family of individuals, from the board through to the home office, to each of the research labs. It's incredible to think about the fact that we are really focusing on how do we change those lives, and how do we change those lives. Digital delivery of services isn't just required to help the lives of those living in remote communities. Living in a city like Toronto, I can't imagine the pressure on parents to get home from work, to pick up their children, to deliver to certain experts, to get home again, to make dinner. If you can receive services remotely, no matter where you are, it can make such a huge difference. So what you're doing is, in my mind, crucial. I think you're going to provide leadership in areas where we really need it. And I think it's great that we've got, and I'll hand it back to Brian, but it's great that we've got a scientific leader, communication leader like Brian Goldman. We need to look for the best advice everywhere we can, because there are people who know how to help us communicate in a way that we get results. And that's, there's just a whole lot of other skill sets we've got to bring to the table. And everything I can see, KBHN is focusing on that. How do we bring all these different skills into our family? How do we make sure that we take what we know and change lives in a very positive way, regardless of where they are? And the global opportunity that can come to Canada as a result, and to families everywhere, is, to me, just so inspiring. So I just want to thank all of you for what you're doing. I wish I could have been here for the whole conference online, but I haven't been able to be, and I miss it, I have to say. So Brian, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks a lot, Senator Deacon. The image that you gave of the researchers at an earlier iteration of KBHN, the researchers in one room, the families in another room, it's quite a startling image. A couple of days ago, we had a really good discussion on family-oriented research and teaching families to be research savvy, to learn about the methods of research, to demystify the process of research. You've talked in terms mainly of service delivery, especially in the time of COVID, and digital service delivery, virtual service delivery. But I wanted to take you back to research. Why do you think it's important that families get together with researchers to talk about ongoing research when it comes to neurodevelopmental disabilities?
I come at it from the perspective of being a startup entrepreneur, where you have an innovator or an entrepreneur who's got a great idea. And I go back to something like the Segway. You know, the Segway, everybody's seen people riding around towns in a Segway. And the Segway was a great solution in search of a problem, its whole 30-year existence pretty much. It was completely disassociated from an application. And to me, that's the real lesson is how is your idea going to change in a positive way? How's it going to affect somebody who's awake at 3 a.m. worrying about something? How's it going to impact that person? How's it going to make it so they get a good night's sleep for the first time? And that's what I'm searching for always when I talk to entrepreneurs is whose life are you going to change? How are you going to get that adoption of your idea in whatever manifestation in a way that's going to change lives? Because that's what's going to keep pulling it through. And that's what's going to create this cyclical motion that is going to be hard to stop. But without that application where you are rendering that delight, where you're causing people to really say, wow, my life's been changed in some way. And that can be clinicians, that can be those who are paying for services, that could be families. It's anybody in particular, you know, it's nobody in particular, but you've got to find that group whose life you can really change through the idea that you've discovered.
You know, your excitement about the future and using COVID-19 as an opportunity, as an engine for change is palpable. I wanted to ask you about, you know, your sense of what has to change in the culture of research, not necessarily in the KBHN community, but in the community of researchers in general. What's the culture that needs to change so that researchers are more cognizant of the needs of the patients and the families about whom they are or for whom they are conducting research? What needs to change in there so that they're more readily able to accept and understand and apply their work to the needs of the families they're trying to help?
Well, there's the $64,000 question, and it's a tough one because Canada's struggled with it. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with some of our best scientists in the country, and I have so much respect for what they do. But one of the critical things we need to do is not just value the idea. So Canada's had an approach through many universities of patenting their research and protecting that research. But the trouble is 65% of those patents in the Canadian inventions patented in the United States are foreign owned within 2 years of the patent being granted. So that we're exporting our knowledge into other economies to be mobilized, rather than finding ways to mobilize it in Canada. So what do we need to do to start to change that? And for me, one of the big things we need to do is we need to change the culture in our universities and our research labs to really appreciate the different skill set, the essential skill set required. And it's a variety, it's different for every idea, it's different for every discovery, but the variety of skills and partners that need to be brought to bear to mobilize that knowledge in a way that it has impact. And it's different in all areas. And KBHN, it's different. But the key is if you stay focused on who will benefit the most, how do we work with them? Treat them as your customer. Don't worry about, to me, if we're just passionate about mobilizing ideas and not worrying about who gets credit, we'll get the credit. Because the reality is those partners will create impact that beyond our wildest dreams. But right now, I think we're far too focused on protecting and getting royalty streams out of universities around ideas. We're not building those community relationships that are really focused on creating value in a way that the leverage for Canada will be enormous. And right now, for me, it's not working for the most part across our country. The majority of our patented ideas are leaving the country within 2 years. So we've got to change the dynamic. And I think our research engine is unequaled by population, but our transmission into the economy needs the research engine to appreciate how important the partners are, and it needs to educate partners in terms of how you respect an idea while you're changing it slightly to become more applicable.
Senator Deacon, I can tell you that conference organizers, as we speak, are scribbling every word that you're saying, because this is a really, really interesting conversation. We haven't heard the last of this. Maybe we'll have to come back next year and have you expand on some of the comments that you've made. But Senator Deacon, I wanted to thank you for speaking with us and helping to kick off today so splendidly. Thank you very much.
Brian, thanks for everything you do. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. That was Senator Colin Deacon, who gave opening remarks, and we had an impromptu conversation that I think people are going to want to ask a lot of questions about, because it was really stimulating. What he had to say really reflects very well on the theme of today's sessions. Senator Deacon, your passion for taking knowledge and applying it to the betterment of children and families is something to be admired. For those of you who are just tuning in, that was the Honorable Senator Colin Deacon providing today's welcoming remarks, which expertly position the day's session on industry partnerships and helping us move forward.